Welcome to the Daily Fix. This is where we're going to try and take apart everything that's happened out on the race course over the last 24 hours. We've only had 24 hours of leg one, but it has been very tricky and we've seen some big changes, not only in the conditions, but also in the positions for the boat. So plenty to talk about, and we're going to start with that very first start gun. I want to show you a clip here of Mupuri, and we've got Bernardo Freitas, who's kind of taken on a bit of a tactician role. Certainly for the start line, you can see quite a lot of him standing behind the skipper, Johan Rashom, and encouraging him to try and get the boat in the best position for the start. Here he is just talking to the crew, and it's worth listening to how it is that they're going to get set up to take advantage of any speed they can find.
In the beginning, and then just a minute to the start, we start putting the bow down if we have the gap, and slowly go, winding up, okay?
The only thing it's difficult to do in the light is blurred lane.
Right, and that sounds like a throwaway comment from Rob Bunce, but that's actually critical. What he's saying there is it's really important not to have to slow down in the final few seconds. Really key that you're going to be rolling in with speed, and unfortunately, that's exactly what happened here for the Lithuanians. Amber Sail 2 found themselves too close to the line with just a few seconds left to go, and so they have to essentially pull the handbrake on and turn down away from the line. Any adjustment to your course in the final few seconds is going to rob you of that hard-fought boat speed that you've built up. And just look at the difference in their angle here. The rest of the fleet all reaching across the line, but Amber Sail 2 desperately trying to turn back up to a good course. And it was pretty tricky sailing for everybody from there. If you were following it live with us, you'll know it was incredibly light, and what breeze there was out there was really only available to the first or maybe windward boats. So hard sailing for everybody and hard for the trimmers. Finding that breeze meant doing things like this. Sending somebody up the rig on a harness, and the height gives you such a good viewpoint. Wasn't a lot of opportunities to tack or sail high or low into that pressure, but at the very least you'd know what was coming, so the trimmers can be ready to make any adjustments for the conditions that are coming their way down the track. So Mupuri sailed really nicely off that line and certainly started this leg in a very strong position. So after the start, and once the fleet sailed through the gate, then we saw the boats being able to pick which way to go. Suddenly they've got a wide expanse of ocean in front of them. They could keep sailing west, they could sail to the south. Now most of them decided to get onto that southerly course fairly soon, and this was a race into the breeze. And we're going to focus on one of the boats here, Team Axel Nobel. We've got Chris Nicholson on the helm, 6 ocean races underneath his belt, and I just want to point out how the crew are working together to trim the boat for maximum speed. So let's take a little bit of a look at who is who and what they're doing on board. So first person to point out is Rosalind Kuiper. This is the main trimmer on board the boat, and she's got her hands on the main sheet running onto the main winch, where she's got all the hydraulic controls to affect that massive sail. At the moment, take a look at that boom angle. Just a couple of minutes later, it's got a shift. It doesn't look like much, but that's a big sail to move. Also, we've got the sailors up at the front, trimming the jib on another massive winch, and that big sheet crossing over the deck and then running through the aft outboard lead, controlling where that clue is. So the main trimmer, Rosalind's got to be talking to the jib trimmer, got to be talking to Chris on the helm, and got to be linking everything together to make sure that not only is one sail set up correctly, but they're set up correctly together, so they're talking together at the same time. The other thing that we're going to see coming into play, just in front of Chris Nicholson here, is the control panel for the keel. So that keel angle can be controlled just by the push of the button from the helm. It doesn't need to be right now, but as the breeze comes up, which it does, then we're going to start needing that to come in. Once the wind comes in, another winch comes into play. Jib trimmer starts putting the sheet onto that winch, start winding it on. So now we've started with a relatively simple picture, and suddenly now we've got 3 sails to trim. The wind comes up and everything starts to feel a little bit nicer. But just when you're thinking, okay, are we sailing well? Have a look now, Rosalind down on the left-hand side of the boat with the binoculars, looking at the other boats. Now, she might be new to the ocean race, but Rosalind's got massive amount of miles done, 30,000 offshore miles in the maxis, Cooks and 50s. She knows what to look for, and she's going to be feeding this to Liz Wardley, the navigator, who knows 65s. Between them, that conversation, I would love to hear it so that we know what is going on board that boat and how AXO are trying to attack the competition. So obviously we've got 2 fleets in the Ocean Race Europe. So let's check in with the Imoca 60s and see what they're doing around about the same time as that clip we just saw from Team Axonabel. This is offshore Team Germany. And one of the things that I wanted to point out here, as any eagle-eye viewers might see, on the left-hand side you've got Annie Lush, 2-time sailor in the Ocean Race. And you'll notice she's only wearing a glove on one hand. If you are unsure as to exactly why that was, a little bit of an injury during the practice race.
I just had a bit of problem, end up burning my hand on a rope because our tack line blew just as I was loading it onto a winch, unfortunately. It was slipping, so I went to put it on the winch, and then that moment it just completely went. Did you remember it was just creeping? And then it just... It always takes a bit too long for your brain to tell your hand to let go of the rope that's burning through it, so I have a bit of a rope burn, but it should be fine for tomorrow. Just need to try to keep it cool and covered up.
So no rest for the wicked for anybody, including Annie Lush. But one of the other things that I wanted to point out on these boats is the difference with how they are being helmed. So offshore Team Germany have got, as you can see, somebody sitting on that top right-hand side helming the boat. Down at the bottom, we've got linked out using their autopilots, perfectly within the rules, but they think that their autopilot is faster than a sailor taking the wheel. 11th Hour Racing on the bottom right, they've got Charlie Enright right now, standing up, peering over the coach roof. But take a look at Coram. So they built a special system to get the helm not only above the coach roof, but right up and out. You can see the waves, you can see the sails, you can make adjustments right on what the sail is telling you. Plus, you can feel the breeze, and it sounds a bit crazy, but a lot of the helms talk about they need that wind on their face to really feel what's going on. We're going to come back to this debate a lot about what is faster, a fresh sailor holding onto the tiller or a very expensive autopilot system. But certainly our teams setting up very differently, and Coram setting up something bespoke to the Ocean Race Europe. And for the moment at least, it seems to be a good system, and they're making pretty much full use of it. So not a particularly physically demanding start. Light winds though, requiring an awful lot of concentration. And that was where we left the fleet as the sun was going down. Once it becomes dark though, the challenges are still there. You've still got to trim the sails, you've still got to make the boat work. So we're back now with Rob Bunce on board Murpuri, and have a look at how it is that they're working together with the trimmers to try and keep a close eye on those sails. A red light, good for keeping the night vision working, checking those telltales, and then feeding back to the trimmers to make sure that the boat's set up correctly. Now it does help if you've got glow-in-the-dark sails here, like they do on the Portuguese team. But the big thing is here, it was a tough night. Let's take a look at the fleet and see where everybody ended up. So let's start with the Imoca 60s, and it was Coram that was the southernmost boat and pretty much in front of the fleet. As the light winds and the darkness kicked in, the fleet kind of shuffled around a little bit, and Coram found themselves to the north as the fleet was still trying to make their way south, but stay in the best breeze. Bureau Valley were at the back and kind of muddled in around the 65s.
Hello everybody, and take two, and the speed anchor with the 65, the bed is here, and I'm beside just here. All is good for Bureau Valley.
So some good sailing there from the French team, and managing to mix it up with the 65s and also cause a little bit of a problem for Amasail too. They rolled right over the top of the Lithuanians, stealing the breeze from their spinnaker. Two fleets not actually racing against each other, but certainly causing a bit of problems. Let's take a look now at the 65s and see how the rest of the night panned out for them. So once the Lithuanians got rolled by the Imoca 60s, they were free to concentrate once again on their rivals, the VO 65, and the fleet pressed on south to try and stay in the good breeze. Murpuri still in the lead, but not by much, and once the fleet jibed over, there was a big split between north and south, so a small change in breeze could bring about a change in the leader. One of the 65s that hasn't fared very well with this downwind course has been this boat. The Austrian Ocean Racing Project haven't got an A4. This is the new light wind downwind spinnaker, and as a consequence they've been lacking speed.
Now it's a VMG downwind, which means that we're doing triple-headed, so Mo, J2, J3, but the other guys have a A4. So at this point they are extending quite a lot on us, which is unfortunate.
Both the 65s and the Imoca 60s are about a third of their way towards that virtual waypoint 500 miles to the west of Portugal. And in the 65 class at the moment, it's Merpuri in the lead. They are furthest south, and it seems like everybody wants to get that way to stay in the best breeze. For the Imoca 60s, Team Germany might be further south, but 11th Hour Racing is closer to the virtual waypoint. As to exactly what that's going to mean, well, we're going to stay glued to the tracker to find out. And so there you have it. A little bit of a difference in speeds between the 65s and the 60s, as anybody would have predicted, but also a big difference in angles within the 60 fleet. Is the helming positions going to come into play, or are we going to start seeing more of the teams relying on that autopilot? And how long can the crews keep up that concentration if the wind stays light and keeps changing as it is? We've got an up-to-the-minute tracker on the website if you want to keep up to date with the positions of the fleet. Tomorrow we're going to be back for another look at what's happened over the last 24 hours, but we're going to leave you with all the footage that we didn't really have room for in today's show. See you next time.
Look, I've got my my daughter gave it to me this morning.
We're going alright. It's just everyone has their moment. You have a good 10 minutes and a bad 10 minutes.
We've put in some good mileage in the last sort of 6 hours on the fleet, so it's been pretty good. Nice wind now and dolphins and sun's coming up. It's all fairly acceptable, really.
Anyway, so far so good. We're VMG running in like 10 to 12 knots. It's been pretty tricky, boat's been going well, but feel like we positioned it, 9 times out of 10 pretty good. Didn't get off to the best start, or a round of beers definitely for that one. But when you don't do it for 18 months, whatever. That's gonna shift overnight. Try to use the shift to our advantage to shift back. Important things, the boat's going well. So that's it for now. Over and out.